everybody, and welcome to my sewing room. Today we're going to talk a little bit about patches, so don't go away. So as I said a minute ago, I want to talk a little bit about how to create your own patches. I've had a few people who've asked me some questions about it, and at first I confess I was a little bit dumbfounded because I wasn't quite understanding what they were asking. So basically I think what the question is, what is the difference between an applique and a patch? And the difference is an applique you will sew directly onto the fabric, the quilt, the purse, or whatever it is that you're doing, and cut the applique part away and then satin stitch around it and make it a permanent part of your project. A patch is something that's freestanding, and you're going to do it on a dissolvable stabilizer, so you can wash away the excess stabilizer and have a nice satin stitch around the edges, and then that patch can be sewn onto something else like a hat or a jacket or something that you can't quite get in your embroidery machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to the machine, and we're going to create an applique patch, and then we're going to cut it out with the scan and cut, and then we're going to wash away the stabilizers. So first thing first, let me move the camera and get set up with the embroidery machine. Okay, so I think the first thing I want to show you is you can create a patch completely from scratch by using your design center. So let's go in my design center, and we're going to do this very much like we did when we were creating our own applique before, but I'm going to do something really simple like a circle. So I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to choose a circle and say okay, and that one is quite a big circle, so let's just size it down. And it's almost 4. Let's just make it 4. 4 by 4. So that's a 4 by 4 circle. So I'm going to say, okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it that I want it to be a running stitch. And let's make it a different color, like pink. And then say, okay, pour bucket, tap it. Now it's a pink circle, and I'm going to put that in the memory because I want to save that exact same size circle. And then I'm going to hit next and preview, and I'm going to set it down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push add, and we're going to go back into my design center, and we're going to bring up that out of the memory that I saved. And it's in my sewing machine. There's my circle. Set that down. Now what I want to do is I want to make it into this double stitch because I want that to sew the fabric down nice and tight so it doesn't move. So I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to make it a different color. Hang on, I pushed the wrong one. I always have to be in this top one here. And let's make it green. Okay, and pour and tap it. Next, preview. Okay, and set that down. So now I have 2. I have one pink circle and one green circle. You can't tell it because they're right on top of each other, but that's what I want. Now I'm going to push add, and I'm going to go back into my design center. And then I'm going to choose a satin stitch, and I'm going to make that satin stitch pink. Say okay. Oh, that would be interesting if I didn't bring that out of the memory. So let's take that out of the memory. Get my circle. And pour and tap. Now that's a satin stitch, so when I push next, it's giving me satin stitch choices here. But before I do that, I'm going to come back here again, and I'm going to make sure this is selected. And on the Stellaire, you have to draw a box around it to select it. On the Luminaire, you can use the box and then the wand, which is really cool. But when I hit size, I am going to just slightly make this a little bit smaller, because when I do the satin stitching, I want it to go into the circle more. So that's why I made it a little bit smaller. And up here the size says it's because of the square that I have chosen. That's what's making it look like it's a lot bigger than it was. Oh my gosh, I tried to deselect it and I actually moved it. Okay, so we're going to push next, and here's our circle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make it wider here than what the default is 0.080. That's not big enough for an applique. So I'm going to move that to 140 and set that down. And the density is good. So I'm going to hit preview. There's a nice wide satin stitch. I'm going to set that down. And now it's on top of these two right here. So now what I want to do is I'm going to add whatever I want my patch to be. And I can do whatever I feel like doing. I'm probably, let's push add, and let's just do something fun like, well, I'm thinking that Minnie Mouse is going to be way too big for this circle. So hit return. Let's just do this Mickey Mouse right here. He's not very big at all. He's not even 2 inches. So, oh wow, he's too small. Let's delete that and push add. I didn't think this through before I decided what I was going to do. This is 4 inches by 4 inches. So let's see. Let's pick this Mickey Mouse. How big is he? 3 by, well, let's do him. Set that down. He fits in there perfectly. So now when I hit embroidery, I'm ready to sew this out. And I'm going to sew the tack down part first, and then the position first, the tack down, and then the satin stitch, and then also the Mickey Mouse in the center of it. But if I didn't want to do it that way, I could do it in a different order. I could sew the Mickey Mouse characters after I'd laid the fabric down. But I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about in a minute. But what I want to do from here is I want to put this in the memory so that I can sew it out later. And then hit return and delete. What am I doing? Oh my gosh. Okay, so now I have a clean slate. So I want to show you how you can create your own embroidery if you want to do that. So what you would do is, let's just say that I wanted to do a princess, and I wanted to make it into an applique. So let's do Tinkerbell right here. She's really pretty, and set her down. And then what I want to do is I want to use the applique tool. So I'm going to hit edit and hit applique. This one is the one I showed you before where you can change parts of the character into applique. This is going to make an applique patch. So I want to do that and see how it automatically created the applique. And I can change the distance away from it if I want to make the applique further away from her so it's not right on top of it. And then when I say OK and embroidery, you will notice that it's going to embroider this entire thing out first. Then it's going to sew a cut line, and I can cut that whole thing out and then lay it down onto some dissolvable stabilizer, and then let it sew the satin stitch around that. So I'll show you how that works as well. So I'm going to put it in the memory of the sewing machine. Now, I got to come back here again. I'm going to push memory. If you have got the update on your Stellaire or your Luminaire, you have something here. That's the connectivity. If you've connected your Scan and Cut and your Stellaire together, you have this button, and you can literally send this to your Scan and Cut and it'll save it. But if you don't, what you can do is you can just go ahead and save this to a stick and take that to the Luminaire, to your scan and cut, and it will find that cut file on it that tells the machine what needs to be cut out to create that stitch when it's completely done, in order to do that as an applique. So I don't have a stick in my machine right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save both of these designs to a stick so I can show you exactly how you would go about doing that. Okay, so I know I said I was going to take you to the scan and cut, and I'm back at the sewing machine. This because after I looked at this a little bit and I put a stick in here, I suddenly realized that I made a mistake, and the mistake was mostly that I didn't read. I just automatically assumed, never assume. When I hit memory and I say I want to save this to my scan and cut, I got a message and I didn't read that message, and it actually says, includes a special pattern that cannot be saved to external memory. Save the pattern in the machine's memory. If I try and put it on a USB stick, I get the same message. And the reason why I got that message is because this is a Disney character. You cannot save a Disney character off of the machine. It won't let you. They're protected. So even if I know I'm going to send it to my scan and cut, which is also made by Brother, it's not going to let me do that. So I'm going to have to do something just a little bit different. And by the way, if you have a scan and cut by Brother and a Baby Lock, Altair, Meridian, or Solaris, you can do this same thing. Of course, you're not going to put a Disney character in. Whatever character you want to do in there, you can create this. You can save it to the stick and take it to your scan and cut, and the scan and cut will find that cut file. So it works just exactly the same way. You just aren't going to have that scan and cut button. Anyway, back to what we were doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel this, and then I'm going to come up here, because this is all together like this, right? So I have to come up here to this one right here. It's under the Edit tab, and it's got a red square around a circle and a square. That emblem means group. So I need to ungroup these so they're not grouped together anymore, and you'll notice suddenly I've got two red circles. So Tinkerbell, let me unselect it and reselect her, is separate now from that. So I'm going to take Tinkerbell and I'm going to delete her. But I still have my patch. So now if I want to save that to the memory, to a USB stick, it says sure, I can do that. That's no problem. So I just saved that to my stick, and I'm going to go and I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to delete that, and then I'm going to go into my memory of my machine and take that Mickey Mouse one that I just created, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to save it to the memory of my stick so that I can cut that circle out the exact size I need it to be. So I'm going to set that down. I'm going to select Mickey, and I'm going to delete him, and then I'm going to save this circle to my memory of my stick, or I could have sent it to my scan and cut. I do have my scan and cut connected to my sewing machine, but I'm going to do this a little bit the long way around because I don't have my scan and cut plugged in. So I'm going to save it to the stick, and then I'm going to take this to my scan and cut, and I'm going to bring it up so I can cut it out. Okay, I'm going to tell you something. I'm having a little trouble. I've told you before I'm not really good with the whole camera part of it. Getting this so it's clear enough, but I think I've got it at least so you can see what the screen looks like. So when you first open this, and if you were sent this through my connection on that button that said on your sewing machine that says scan and cut, you would think that you would hit retrieve data, and you open this and you're like, oh, okay, it's going to be on the cloud. It's not. So what you're going to do is see the two arrows on the sides here. You're going to push the arrow, and there's a button that's called My Connection. And if you hit that, it's going to say retrieve, and you'll be able to bring your designs in from there. So mine says right up here in the corners has Wi-Fi with a line through it, which means I'm not connected to the internet. So I need to go ahead and do that with my scan and cut. Probably since I moved, I haven't taken care of that. But anyway, we did save this to a USB. So I'm going to go back to this part right here. It says retrieve data, and then go into my USB. Every time you save a design directly from your sewing machine to a USB stick, it's going to be in the B pocket. And I've said this before, I always thought it meant the back pocket. It actually means the brother pocket. So I'm going to go down till I find my brother pocket. I'm not even sure what they call it when it comes from Baby Lock, but I think it's still called the B pocket. And then here's my design, and there's my Tinkerbell shape right there. So I'm going to hit that. Now when it comes up here, it's asking me, do you want to use the flower cutout or do you want the applique cutout? I'm not sure which one works better. And I would say try them both and see if they're the right size. But this one here is telling me that it's 4.87 by 4.91. My original design that I have on my machine is 4.88 by 4.91. So I'm assuming this is the one I want for my tack down. I certainly hope I'm correct. So I'm going to choose that one, say okay. And then this one, it's going to give me 3 choices, 1, 2, 3. And because there's 3 steps in this design, and I want this cut one right here that's in the center. So I'm going to say okay, and then I'm going to set that down. And here it is right here on my screen. That's what I want to cut out. So I'm going to move the camera back a little bit so you can see what I'm going to do in order to cut this out so I can do it on my applique. So let's do that. Okay, now that we've moved back, obviously you can't see my screen. It's just too far away, but you know basically what we're doing. We're going to cut this out. I am going to use my standard mat, and I have taken some fabric, and this is just plain old white cotton fabric. And to be honest with you, if you want to make a good sturdy patch, you probably want to use a duck cloth or a twill or something a little heavier than this. I did iron some fusible woven on the back of it because I like fusible woven. It stiffens everything up really nice, and that stiffened the fabric a little bit. And then I ironed some heat and bond onto the back of it. To make a patch, you probably don't want to do it just with fabric, but you could without a heat and bond if you're not going to iron it onto anything. And then you want to cut it with your fabric cutting mat with your fabric blades because it's not going to be stiff enough. This is nice and stiff with all the layers and everything I've got, so it's going to go onto this really well. This has seen better days. It's been used so much that it's not really all that sticky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some embroidery pink tape. If you haven't used embroidery pink tape by Floriana yet, you really want to use it. It is fabulous for holding things down when you're embroidering, but it also is really great for holding things down on your mats when your mats have seen better days like mine has. That's not going to do anybody any good. Let's get that on there really good. There's one piece, and then I need a better work table here. I've got my scan and cut sitting on the table that I usually do most of my cutting and everything on. I'm trying to do a million things at once here. So that's going to hold that pretty well so it doesn't give me any trouble. And then I'm going to put it right here. And I'm going to hit the mat loading button, which is going to load my mat. Push that down really good. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to see where this is going to go. And unfortunately white fabric doesn't show really good in the background, but we're going to give it a try. I'm going to move this a little bit more forward, and I'm going to hit this. It looks like a little picture of the mat. It's in the center right here. And if you hit that and hit start, it'll scan your mat. I always watch the back to make sure that it doesn't hit the wall or something. And then on my screen, I'm actually going to see that I have this in the center of my fabric. And now I think what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to put another one on there. So I'm going to say okay, and let's see, push add, and go all the way back to pattern, retrieve data from the stick. Remember, even though you can't see the screen, that I had the circle one on there as well. So let's go to the B pocket. Okay, Rosemary, there's the B pocket, and then there's that circle. And I'm going to set that down, and I'm going to move the circle so it's on the fabric as well. So they're both showing on my fabric right here. You're going to just have to take my word for it because I'm not going to zoom back in again. But they're both on there, and they both look like they're ready to cut. So now all I have to do is select cut, and then I'm not going to do a test. I'm just going to go ahead and cut, and I'm going to cross my fingers. So let's start, and it's going to test it to see how thick my fabric is. Oh, that's a big circle. Wow. Well, let's see what it looks like. So what it did was it actually, and I'm guessing that let's just hit finish and go back. I'm going to hit this. Select cut. And then I'm going to hit the tool, the little wrench, and I'm going to see cut pressure. I have my half cut on, and I forgot to turn it off. But you know what? It's not a tragedy, because what it did was it cut, let me see if I can show you. I'm going to lift it off here. It cut through the top layer and the fusible woven, but not through the back of the heat and bond. So I got that piece of fabric exactly what I wanted it to be with the heat and bond, so I can lay it on there. And then this one here, and if you had wanted to cut through this plastic paper that was on the back, you could you just have to turn the half cut off. And that's the shape of the Tinkerbell one. And we're going to go ahead and do this as a patch, and we're going to see how it works. So we're back in front of the sewing machine, and I have put the Tinkerbell design up on the screen. And when we get ready to push embroidery to embroider this out, you will notice that the first design is the picture of Tinkerbell that wants to sew out. And to be honest with you, I don't really understand the sewing machine's logic in this. I think, to be honest with you, what it wants to do when you do the auto applique feature is it wants to embroider all of this out and then sew the outside line, and then you take it out of the hoop and you cut it out, and then you re-hoop up the fabric that you want to put the applique on. Like, for instance, if you were going to put it on a baby blanket, after you've embroidered it on a piece of plain white fabric, you take it out of the hoop, you cut it out, you lay it on the baby blanket, and then it appliques it to the baby blanket. That's the way it thinks that you're going to do this. But we're making a patch. So what I want to do is I want to applique the fabric down on my stabilizer first. So I'm going to push the plus minus button, and I'm going to go up, and there's my satin stitch, and there's my tack down, and there's my first placement stitch. So the next thing is I have my 5x7 hoop, and the reason I did the smaller hoop is because The smaller the hoop, the less pull it's going to do while it's embroidering, and I don't want it to pull it in and mess up my lineup. So the smallest I could go with this design was 5x7, and that's what I have hooped up. The other thing is that I have hooped up the Floriani Wet and Gone. Wet and Gone works really good for this, as does Badge Master, which is a OESD product, and then some of the other ones have ones that's called Wash Away. Whatever, something that completely dissolves is what you want, but you don't want the topper. The topper is too thin and it's going to tear as you try to embroider it out. So you want something really thick. They used to make one years ago that was called Super Solvi, that was really thick plastic. And then when you washed it away, it left it kind of stiff and crunchy. So the Wet and Gone works pretty good for what I want to do. But again, there's all different kinds of products. So I'm going to put this down. And I'm going to sew out this last satin stitch that's going to finish out my patch with white. So I have white bobbin thread in there, and I would normally sew this first placement stitch with white, but I want you to be able to see it, so I've got black in there. So I'm going to put it down, and I'm going to hit the stitch button so that it'll sew that first step. And it's okay. So I stopped and I hit a reverse and went back to the beginning because there's a couple of things I need to point out to you. One is, if you get into your settings here, there is an embroidery foot height right here. And I've got mine at 0.080, and the default is 0.060. If you go down one more to 0.040, your foot will come closer to your fabric. And if you have nothing on here but the wash away, the needle has just a little bit too much wiggle room and it breaks threads and it makes me crazy. So that's number one that I want to tell you. The other thing is that when you're just doing a running stitch, sometimes when it starts to sew, what happens is it doesn't pick up the bobbin thread, and then you have all these stitches with no stitching. So I'm going to tell you a trick that I've done a million times, because Brother does that when it does placement, is I hold the top thread, I push the needle down and push the needle up, and I pull up that bobbin thread like you do when you're quilting. You know, when you get started doing free motion quilting, sometimes you got to pull that bobbin thread up. So go ahead and do that. Don't ask me why I've got so much bobbin thread here. I'm going to put my foot up and put this so it's down here. Now I'm going to put the foot back down again. Now I've got the bobbin thread and the upper thread together in my hand when I push go, and I should get a nice even stitch without a problem. The only thing is you got to stop, just like you do when you're quilting, and go ahead and cut this, which I don't have a pair of scissors in my hand, so I'm just going to push go and pull it out of the way. And it's going to do the placement stitch. Okay, that's done. Now I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to pull this off so I can show you. There is my placement stitch, just like that. Now I'm going to cross my fingers and pray that this, and you know what, I'm going to tell you something. If you use steam-a-seam that's sticky on the back, or there's a couple of other ones. There's one that's made by OESD that's also an applique that's sticky on the back. It makes it easier to line it up with your lines so that you're not sitting there holding it down. But this fits on that absolutely perfectly. I'm so happy. I was so afraid it wasn't going to fit. So I'm going to lay that down so it'll tack it down. Okay, so I moved the camera so that you could kind of see a little bit better, hopefully, where I'm doing here. I've got this lined up right on top of that, and I got my next step I don't know if this tack down thing's going to do the job, but I'm going to hold it down with my hand. It would be so much better if I had the sticky steam seam that would hold it, but that tacked that down pretty darn good. So that's going to be there. So now the next part is I want to satin stitch it down, and I'm definitely not going to do this in black because I don't want it to be black. So I'm going to switch it over to white. So I got white in here, and I'll be honest with you, this is a practice patch, and maybe the black's going to show, but I needed to do that so you could see my outline. So, but I'm going to go ahead and push this, and I'm going to push that, and I'm going to go ahead and do that last satin stitch applique part. And it is doing a zigzag stitch first before it starts to satin stitch, which is a good thing. Now remember when we made the Mickey Mouse one, I made the satin stitch wider. I do like a wider satin stitch around my patches. This is the auto applique part of the machine, so I don't know how wide this satin stitch is going to be. So we're going to find out. Once it finishes doing this zigzag stitch, I'm going to stop it for a second because I want to talk to you a little bit. If you don't have a scan and cut and you don't cut this out ahead of time, what you could have done at this point is you could have just laid a big square of fabric over that placement thing. And then after it sewed this outline stitch, you would take your hoop off your machine and take every bit of fabric that's on the outside part of this and cut it off. I've shown that to you in other applique videos I've done in the past where you cut the excess fabric off. So you could do it that way and it still works the same way as a patch. Just remember that the initial fabric that you're appliquing on is a wash away fabric. So don't think you have to have a scan and cut to create patches. It does make it really nice though, I have to confess. So now it's going to do the satin stitch around it after it finishes. And it looks like it's doing a really nice job of satin stitching that down. So now when it finishes doing this satin stitch all the way around, the next step on here is going to be for it to embroider the Tinkerbell. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it up. I'm going to do the Tinkerbell stitching all over that, and then I'm going to be all finished with it, and I'm going to have a patch. Okay, so I'm finished embroidering this out, and so I have a confession to make to you. I've mentioned to you, a lot of you who watch my channel all the time know that my name is Rosemary Hernandez. And yes, I know I pronounced that wrong, but I was married to my late husband for 38 years. Here's a picture of us together. This was on our 38th wedding anniversary. I lost him about 8 years ago. But anyway, so we were married for a very long time. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Over the years that we were married, we would take liberties a little bit with some of the embroidery designs that we would do, and that's what I've done here. This is the picture of my Tinkerbell. She has dark hair. My great-granddaughter's name is Luna, and we put Luna's name on here. I thought about this after I made this. I thought to myself, I have 5 great-grandchildren. Luna and Liliana are from my grandson Stephen, and Stephen has green eyes, even though he looks very Hispanic. So Tinkerbell has green eyes and black hair, and I think that Luna will really like this picture a whole lot. But I thought about it after I made this, that because I have 5 great-grandchildren, I guess I have to make 4 more of these. 3 for the boys and 2 for the girls. So I guess I better get busy doing that. But anyway, back to the lesson that I'm trying to show you. Now that we have finished this, and we set this in the shape and everything. The only thing we have to do now is take the wash away stabilizer off. So to do that, one of the things you can do first is just go ahead and cut off all the excess that's here. Like that. And then let me scooch a little closer. Isn't that pretty? It came out really, really cute. This is wash away. It's made of like a cornstarch. So when I run this under hot water, it will literally disappear right to the edge of my satin stitching, and then I'll have a patch. And because I used the heat and bond on the back part of it will be an iron-on patch, so I could iron it onto something if I wanted to. And if you wanted to, you could put other stabilizers on it that are permanent. Like for instance, OSD makes one that you can iron onto the back of it, and then when you iron it onto something else, it becomes permanent. Or you could actually stick it onto a jar or something like that, which is really cool. Those things that you cannot sew. Like if I put this on a purse, I could probably sew it on there. But if I was going to put it on a baseball hat, that's really hard to sew that on there. So I might want to use a permanent that would hold it in place for good, and I wouldn't have to go back and stitch it on. Or if I put it on a jar, I would want to use something that would make it permanent. Or I could glue it on if I wanted to, just using some really strong glue. But the point is that basically this is going to disappear, and I'm going to end up with a patch. I'm not going to have something that's sewn onto something else. So I mean, I think it came out really cute. I'm very pleased with it. So hopefully that answers some of the questions for those of you who want to make patches out of your embroidery designs. I could have went ahead and done the Mickey Mouse one, but I didn't because I wanted to get this video finished. I will go ahead and make a whole bunch of more of them. I think it'll be really fun. But I hope I taught you something today about, even with all the crazy stuff with my scan and cut and everything, with this video. And I hope you had a good time, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.